Hey guys, so I'm finally back from my travels and I'm here to answer your Q&A questions to the video that I posted maybe a month ago before I left on my little trip. But yeah, first of all, I want to thank every one of you who posted a question. There was quite a few of them, and I don't think I'm going to be able to answer every single one of them because honestly, I don't want to make this a 3 hour long epic. But yeah, let's just jump right into it. And oh, before I start, I'm going to announce the winner of the lure giveaway in the end of this video. So stay tuned for that, and let's just start answering those questions. So the question of how and when I started to make fishing lures for the first time was a very popular one, and I have to go way back in time to when I was maybe 12 or 14 years old. Our shop class teacher at that time, who happened to be our headmaster at 2, had this bright idea of us making a fishing lure at class. And I remember making this kind of like Rapala original looking thing. I think it was a redhead too. You know, very classical, traditional looking lure. I mean, of course, you can imagine that being my first lure ever, that it looked pretty bad. But that was the very first time I ever made anything that resembled a fishing lure. And after that, I kind of like got interested in the whole process of making them and kind of like started to dabble on my own at home. I would take broomsticks and cut them in various lengths and then just carve them into fishing lures and use like paper clips to make the through wire, and then just use my mom's nail polish and just like rattle can spray paints as well to paint them. And after that I kind of like lost interest in the whole thing, and there was a really long gap that I just didn't do anything regarding like any kind of fishing lure. I was more into music and computers and you know, extreme overclocking in particular. I was really into that for a short period of time. And maybe I'd say 8 or 9 years ago, I was fishing with my brother in springtime, and of course we were trying to catch pike. And he had just bought these Buster jerk baits, and he was catching fish like left and right, and I was like thinking to myself like, I bet I could do something like that. I don't know what it was, but I think the fact that he was like so successful at that, I was thinking to myself that yeah, I'm gonna try that. And after that I made a couple of prototypes and they actually worked. And after that I was completely obsessed with the lure making stuff, and I have been pretty much obsessed ever since that time. And yeah, that was pretty much the origin story of how and when I started to make fishing lures. This is a great question, and currently I'm very much into trying different kind of materials. I mean, of course I do get my kicks out of like making normal looking lures from soft plastics and different kind of woods and all of those things, but currently I do feel like I'm much more inspired into trying out different materials. And I have a couple of good ideas already brewing in my head, and just have to wait and see what I'll come up with. A fellow Finn asks if I have ever thought about making ice fishing lures, and I have thought about it, and I might do something at some point, but I'm not really that much into ice fishing myself. I mean, I do go once in a while, but it's not something I really do. It's not something I'm very passionate about, like some people are. But yeah, maybe at some point I'll do something regarding that. So this is a pretty tough question, and I gave it a little bit of thought, and I'm thinking probably different kinds of like hybrid baits are gonna become much more popular and much more used. And I don't know, maybe some sort of like robotics will come into play. Like, you know, drones seem to be pretty big right now, so maybe something to do with those. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? It's really tough to predict what will become really like a trend thing. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what people are gonna come up with next and what becomes popular. Because usually it's really impossible to predict these kind of things. So just have to wait and see, I guess. Number one go-to bait. I'm gonna have to say some sort of soft bait. I use a lot of those nowadays, and they're very successful and easy to make as well. So yeah, I'm just gonna say soft bait. So my best, or at least most memorable fishing story happened in 2016 in November, and I believe it was November 6th, if I'm not mistaken too much. It was a beautiful fall day, kind of sunny, kind of cold, maybe 2 degrees, and completely flat calm. There was absolutely no wind at all. And I had made this plan earlier that if the conditions were favorable, I would head out to this spot on the other side of the lake that had this deep hole that went down to 30 meters. And I already knew from past experience that this spot would gather a lot of bait fish in the fall time. And sure enough, when I arrived to this spot, there was like carpets and carpets of bait fish. And I don't think I've ever seen so many bait fish until then in my sonar. And I was like going like this, that oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna catch something today. And it didn't take me more than maybe 10 minutes before I hooked in my first pike. It was a nice 4 kilo fish, you know, nothing to brag about, but still, you know, really nice pike. And I continued fishing and you know, really grinding it out, trying to hook into something bigger. And it took me maybe a couple of, you know, 2 hours, I think. No, 2.5 actually. 2.5 hours until I hooked into my next fish, and I already knew from the first head shakes that this was definitely a bigger fish. And I reeled it in, and when I first saw the pike and when it surfaced, my jaw almost dropped. It was incredibly fat. The pike was only 90 centimeters long, but it weighed 8.8 kilos, and the shoulders on that thing was like this, really thick. And I was like over the moon with that fish, and it started to get pretty late at that time, you know, kind of dark, and I already started to notice that there was like storm clouds gathering in the sky too, and I was like, I probably should head back home. So I decided to, you know, call it quits and just head back home, because, you know, I caught that nice fish, and I was like, you know, feeling good, and I was very pleased with the whole fishing session. And also when I was rowing back home, this really thick fog started to appear. And when the fog started to appear, snow started to fall at the same time. And I keep rowing and rowing, and the fog keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker. And to a point where, I swear to God, like I couldn't see 2 meters in front of me, and it was completely silent. I couldn't hear any sounds at all. And I couldn't even navigate because I couldn't even see the city lights. So I started to get kind of worried that, how's this gonna go? But then I figured that, you know, I'm just gonna go somewhere, and eventually I'm gonna hit the beach. And sure enough, I did, but I was like way, way, way off the course. But eventually I was able to navigate back to my back to my home base. And I still to this day remember that day so clearly. It was almost eerie how completely silent it was. So, such a cool experience. I hope I experience that someday again. This is kind of a tough question because I've never actually counted how many lures I've made, but it's definitely in the thousands, for sure. Just like everyone else, I do get snagged all the time, and I actually don't really care at this point anymore because I mean I'm making the lures myself. It doesn't really matter to me at all if I end up losing them, and I feel like you kind of have to have that kind of a mentality that when you throw the lure, you already forfeited the lure. Like you have to fish it the way you have to fish it in places that you're probably gonna lose it, because that's usually the spot where the bigger or more quality fish are hiding at. So don't be afraid to lose lures. This is probably the easiest question I was asked, and yeah, it's pizza. I could eat pizza until my face turns blue, and I think my favorite is Meat Lover Superior. Yeah, that's the one. The strangest material that I've ever used for fishing lure is still to be seen. I mean, I kind of alluded already before that I have some plans already in motion. I just have to test stuff out and see what works and what doesn't. But yeah, just wait and see. It's gonna be cool. I promise. No, I can't say I've ever met the man before. I mean, there's kind of a gap between our countries, you know. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I live in Finland and he lives in the USA. So having some sort of squad, like kind of a lure making squad, might be kind of a difficult thing to organize. Maybe we could have a transatlantic lure making squad, something like that. But you know, I've done lure making collaborations in the past, and those have always been pretty fun. So I might be up for something like that. So Marlin Bates, if you're watching this, maybe we should do something together. So if you're interested, hit me up. So the biggest lure I ever made was a walleye, kind of like a hybrid bait with a giant curly tail on the back of the bait, and it looked like this. I believe that bait was around 42 centimeters long with the tail extended, and the weight of that bait was around 250 or 270 grams. My memory is a little bit fuzzy when it comes to this particular bait because it was such a long time ago, but I did make it for an American musky angler who wanted me to make something truly unique. And have I ever been to Sweden? Yep, I've been to Sweden few times. So, out of all of the baits that I make, which one has been my most productive one? And it's actually something that you guys haven't seen on my channel, nor have I even posted it on anywhere social media. So, this is kind of like a first bailing of that bait. And it's this one. It's a really small soft plastic bait that I made for perch, I think 6 years ago. And it's been by far my most productive bait, and the colors that usually work the best have been like very natural, kind of like silvery colors, and also white has always been a really good color for me, and yeah, it's this one. So I think something that you guys weren't probably expecting, considering I make baits that are usually like this size. But yeah, by far my most productive bait. Personally, I think the easiest lure style has to be a soft plastic bait. And something like an open pore mold would be something that I would probably get into first. And yeah, the material cost for something like this is really low, and it's fairly easy to make something that works really well too. So a soft plastic bait with an open pore mold, yeah, that has to be the easiest one. The boat that I use for my fishing adventures is a very simple, just a rowing boat actually. It's only like 4.2 meters long, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. And even though it looks stable, it is not. It is definitely not stable enough to, if the wind goes over, let's say 5 or 6 meters per second, it's dangerous to be in that boat. But it serves me pretty well. I mean, I don't really feel like I need anything more elaborate than that. Well, I have to say the most difficult thing when it comes to this YouTube stuff has to be the video editing side of things, and you know, the actual technical side of creating these videos for you guys. And also I have to say it's very difficult for me not to start to ramble in these videos. It's really difficult. And the third thing that comes to my mind is actually talking to the camera like I'm doing right now, because this doesn't come very naturally to me, and on top of that, English is not my first language, so I always kind of like try to force myself to do stuff like this once in a while, because I do feel like I do benefit from it. And yeah, that has to be the most difficult things when it comes to my channel. So I was thinking here that I can't really nail it down just one band or one album that I really like, so I decided to go with 5 different Finnish bands and 5 different foreign bands. And I think we're gonna start with the foreign bands first. Firstly, we're gonna go to France. This is Blut aus Nord with Dialogue with the Stars. This is really cool melodic black metal from this one dude who seems to have a fixation with trilogies, and this is actually one of those albums in one of those trilogies. Really awesome stuff. And after France, we're gonna go to Switzerland. This is Passage de Verre das Tor, which means a door or a gateway. And this is really raw atmospheric black metal from this, again, one guy. And I don't think I would recommend this for anyone who is a beginner in extreme metal or black metal, because this is so freaking raw. But still actually been listening to this quite a bit recently and been enjoying it. And after those more modern bands, we're gonna go with an absolute classic album. I feel like this is probably the first Norwegian black metal album ever, and of course I'm talking about Mayhem's Live in Leipzig live album, with the classic lineup of Dead on vocals, Euronymous on guitar, Necrobutcher on bass, and of course the mighty Hellhammer on drums. And yeah, this is really awesome classic Norwegian black metal. I feel like Mayhem was at their pinnacle with this one, even though I do like the Mysteries of Satanas album quite a bit, but still I feel like this is where it's at. But yeah, speaking of classic albums, we have another one here from Sweden. This is Bathory's first album, and I think a lot of people say that they feel like The Return or Under the Sign of the Black Mark is much more superior to this one, but personally I've always enjoyed this the most, because it's so raw and so energetic and wild sounding that I just can't get enough of it. And I think after this video I'm gonna play this one. But yeah, absolutely classic, awesome Swedish black metal. And I think this next album is probably my all-time favorite Norwegian black metal album ever. And of course I'm talking about Emperors in the Nightside Eclipse. And I feel like this album has the perfect balance between symphonic elements and pure black metal. And I feel this album has a really strange, well, not strange, but kind of like archaic feel to it. And I can't really put my finger on it, but I've spent hours and hours and hours listening to this album when I was a teenager, and still to this day enjoy this immensely. Those were the foreign bands, and now we are gonna go with the Finnish bands. And we're gonna go with something more modern. This is Wintersun's Time 1 album. And this is extremely bombastic and symphonic, extreme metal. I think you could probably say that this is like melodic death metal or melodic black metal even. But this album has a really cool oriental feel to it as well. And yeah, I think the song Sons of Winter and Stars is probably one of my all-time favorite Finnish metal songs. Really, really awesome album. And I hope they're gonna release that Time 2 album soon. Yeah, after something more modern, we're gonna go to way back in time. We're gonna go to Rovaniemi, which is in northern part of Finland, and of course I'm talking about Beherit. This is Beherit's Drawing Down the Moon album, and this is a really strange album when it comes to this period in black metal, because it's so different when you compare to a lot of the Norwegian bands and of course the Swedish ones as well. First of all, the vocals here are these kind of like whispers even, like whispery grunts or growls. It's really unique sounding stuff, and I think the first time I heard this I was kind of scared, to be honest. This album has a really awesome archaic occult feeling to it as well, and yeah, absolutely classic stuff. And I felt like I would have a little bit more variety on the Finnish albums, and I do listen to a lot of different types of music, and we're gonna go with something more heavy now. This is Reverend Bizarre's Crush the Insects. This is doom metal with kind of like classic feel, with an awesome vocalist, really cool lyrics, and I feel like this album in particular has this kind of like effect on me personally, at least, that I can't just listen to one song. I have to listen to this in its entirety. But yeah, really awesome band. Too bad they're not around anymore. And after that, we're gonna go to my all-time favorite Finnish metal album, and I think band as well. This is Moon Sorrows, Varjona kuljemme kuolleiden maassa, which means as shadows we walk in the land of the dead. And yeah, this is such an awesome album. I mean, I think I've listened to this album 1,000 times, or even more than that probably. Yeah, if you would describe the sound, it's like a wall of sound with a cinematic quality to it. Yeah, again, this is one of those albums that I just can't just listen one song and just skip the rest. I just have to listen to this from the start to beginning, from the start to the end. Yeah, wow, this is such an awesome album. And I think lastly, we're gonna go with something, probably the most evil album ever to come out from Finland. This is Beheksen's By the Blessing of Satan. And as you can probably imagine, this is black metal again. And I think this is probably, well, it's not probably, it is my favorite Finnish black metal album of all time. And yeah, just, you know, look at these guys. You can see that they are not playing around. Yeah, Well, this is Behexen by the Blessing of Satan. Awesome, awesome album. But yeah, that's all of my personal favorites, and hopefully maybe some of you guys might find something new from there. I feel like I'm kind of giving you a cop-out answer to this question when I say that I enjoy all type of fishing. I just don't have one specific style that I really enjoy. I mean, I think it depends on my mood really. Um, Sometimes I want to go fly fishing, sometimes I'm gonna want to go trolling, and just depends on my mood. And what is the best lure that I have ever made? And should I show it to you? It's something that you guys haven't seen yet. I mean, maybe some of you have because I posted it on Instagram. But yeah, it's this one. It's a giant trout swim bait, and I actually spent probably like 3 months making this. I made two different versions of this, and this is the final version of it. Actually been filming the video for this one, and I'm pretty sure that's gonna be the next video I'm gonna be releasing after this Q&A one. So I think it's this one. At least this is the most, this is the lure that I'm most proud of, for now at least. So when I first read this comment, I wasn't sure if I wanted to include it in this Q&A, but I feel like I want to make this a little bit more personal. So, have I ever thought about suicide? And I have to say that I have. I was bullied mercilessly when I was a kid, so of course when you're in that situation, suicide starts to seem like a good way out. But now that I think about it, right, retrospectively, I feel like I never was really serious about it. I mean, of course, when you're feeling down and hopeless and all of that, you kind of like start to feel that suicide is a attractive option. But yeah, I feel like those feelings went away pretty fast with me. I mean, I've never been really one of those people that have long periods of depression or anything like that. So yeah, I have thought about it, but very briefly. I feel like I have kind of shifted with this one, because previously I really liked painting my baits a lot more than just designing them, but nowadays I feel like I'm enjoying the whole process of designing and making the lure itself a little bit more. I mean, they're pretty even, I'd say, but still I feel like it's shifted a little bit more towards the designing part. So yeah, because of my limiting tool arsenal that on my disposal, I don't really have any kind of big electric tools on my disposal. So what I would always have is at least a knife, some sanding paper, maybe a rasp, and some sort of multi-tool is always really good to have. So I feel like a lot of people make this same mistake in the beginning, and I was one of those people too, where I would focus way too much on the aesthetics of the lures and not really understanding the action of the lures that I would make. And that's really where your focus should be in the beginning, really understanding why the different types of lures that we make behave in a certain way. I mean, the action is really what really triggers the fish to bite your lures in the first place, so that should be your main focus in the beginning, for sure. Hmm. Well, the reason why I don't really have that typical rally englanti accent as the person who was asking me this question was referring to is probably because of like of my influences. Like I've always been into Hollywood movies, you know, TV series, and of course like music has always been a really big part of my life as well. So I think the stuff that you find cool, you kind of like start to emulate when you're young, especially. And you know, nowadays I talk in English pretty much every single day. You know, since my wife is not Finnish, and you know, you get a lot of practice that way too. So I think nowadays it's more about practicing the whole language thing. So I think it just comes naturally to me at this point. So yeah, I think that's the reason why. So since I have been doing those intros with me talking to the camera before I start the video, I figured that there might be a possibility that somebody's gonna ask something about my beard, and you guys did not fail me. But yeah, uh, ever since I was able to grow a beard, I pretty much had one, and that was also coincidentally the time I started to lose my hair. So I figured, hey, well, why not just compensate on the lack of hair with my beard? So that's exactly what I did, and the current length that I have right now, I've had this for a couple of years now, and yeah, my beard actually grows really freaking fast. So it's really difficult for me to say how long it actually took me to get to this point. I'm gonna say maybe 4 to 5 months maybe. Um, but yeah, unfortunately it doesn't really give me any special abilities when it comes to lure making stuff. It just looks awesome. So. So the question of who and what inspires me was asked quite a few times, and I think we're gonna start with the who's first. And if you go into any social media nowadays, be it Facebook, Instagram or whatever, you're gonna find some amazing lure makers. I mean, fantastic stuff is being done nowadays, and I feel like if I'm gonna start naming names here, a lot of people are gonna be upset because I didn't mention them. So I'm just gonna have to say that there's a lot of really talented people out there. Just have to find them. And what inspires me? Well, that's a really tough question because I feel like I get inspired by anything and everything nowadays. Like it could be literally me walking outside just blasting my music and I just get an idea. Or I might be in a grocery shop and I see some sort of exotic fruit and I'm like, hey, that might be pretty interesting if I transfer that shape into some specific lure that I have been thinking about a little while. So yeah, those are the things that kind of inspire me the most nowadays. Now is the time that most of you guys have probably been looking forward to, and I'm going to announce the winner of the lure giveaway. And I think we're going to look at the prizes first. Firstly, we have this cool glide bait in Fight Tiger color. And then we're going to have this cool carp swim bait that I made a video about as well. Really cool stuff. And I think I'm gonna throw in something extra to the package as well. Just don't know what yet. So it's gonna be a surprise. So the winner of the lure giveaway is going to be this person. So congrats. I'm going to contact you through private message. And hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope it wasn't too boring. And I'll see you guys on the next video.